Hello, and welcome to BXG Productions presents The Annals of Our Lore. Annals of Our Lore. It's filmed in front of a live studio audience. I am your host, Greg Filson. Joining me is my esteemed co-host, Brenton Bestwick. Brenton, how are your annals tonight?
Hot. Loaded up the cheeseburger with maybe a little bit too much Cajun powder and wound up having a situation.
I've been there too many times I really just after I turned 35, that's when all that stuff started hitting me up. So that is bad, Brenton. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. Glad we are separated by thousands of miles. Okay.
Right.
So before we dive into the show, I just want to make sure we get the housekeeping out of the way. You want to make sure you follow BXG Productions on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. I am at GT Phils on Instagram, GT Philson on Twitter. Brenton is Alpha Donut Guy on both Twitter and Instagram. I had mentioned the YouTube. Make sure you check that out for our videos. The trailer reactions are always a lot of fun, so check those out. Leave kind comments, all that good stuff.
Or keep your fucking mouth shut.
You could do that. Okay, so with this particular show, we like to just dive right in. And the premise of this show, this is the second one, the second episode of this. Basically, it's pretty loose compared to the other, the Nexus, because
That's what she said.
because it's more of a free-ranging conversation. We bring in a guest. The three of us each have a topic. They do not have to be similar to another. They can be just the way they work out. We don't talk about them beforehand. Really, we know what they are maybe, but we don't discuss what we should have. So, like I said, the topics are chosen by myself, Brenton, and our guest. And our guest tonight, he's a friend of the program, and he's brand new's biggest fan, Barry Jones. Barry, welcome to the Annals of the Lore.
All right. Thanks for having me back, guys. It's an honor.
How are your annals tonight, Barry?
I'm glad that I had a couple minutes to prepare the answer, and I've decided the best answer I can give you is normal, which is actually a change of pace. Well, I mean, better than normal. I'm fairly regular. Things are going smoothly in that department.
A lot of fiber.
I turned 35 in like a week and a half, so maybe that's when it's all going to go to hell, according to you, but we're going to enjoy ourselves until then.
Yeah, I will say that was, for whatever reason, and I don't believe in stuff like that, but for whatever reason, that year took a big toll on just various things.
Yeah.
Health wise. Not like I'm not in bad health. It's just that I realized, I'm not as fast anymore. I'm not, I can't digest food as well. It's just weird. But anyhow, that's not what this show is about.
My 40 time has been falling year by year. You need a sundial for my 40 now.
I can understand when you see professional athletes. Not that I'm not obviously anywhere close to, a collegiate athlete at my prime, but I'm just saying when I was a fast, long distance runner, I felt pretty good about myself. And then 35 hit and I was like, ooh, that's rough. Mostly everything hurts. So we like to just jump right in with this show. And Barry, as our guest, what is the topic you would like to discuss tonight or today, whenever you're listening, everybody?
So, as I know, all of us have previously competed competitively on sports teams and things like that back in our own, I guess, prime days, as you mentioned earlier. I wanted to talk about camaraderie and sort of, I don't know if you guys experienced it. I didn't realize that I experienced it so heavily until I started coaching. But whenever you quit competing at different things, how it sort of leaves a hole or a gap, because the camaraderie / competition of being on a team or even just being in a group, is something that I always thought that I missed, but I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started coaching. And I didn't know if that was something that you guys could speak on, or you experienced that similarly or what that looks like, because I played high school basketball, not at a high level, not anything special. I was the tallest guy in a small school, so I was kind of forced to play. But I didn't realize just how much I would miss, I guess, not to sound trite, but the grind of practice and bus rides and, sitting with your teammates during meals and different things like that. So that's kind of the topic that I wanted to discuss tonight, and that's kind of camaraderie / competition, and how either that's molded you, or if you continue to do that in different ways, because obviously there are different sports that people are still competitive in. As our bodies begin to fail us, I have a lot of friends that are really taking up golf and cornhole pretty competitively, and just wanted to see what you guys thought about that, or what your experience was in that area.
Brendan, you want to go first here? You have more. I honestly didn't. I stopped playing in ninth grade any organized sports as for like a team. I guess I played softball when I was like 19 or 20, but beyond that, I have just mostly been a pickup artist, as it were.
Why do you do that with your hands after you said that?
Yeah, I think it's actually just a thing I do. I don't think about it.
Are you
But
doing
I do it
this
a lot.
for?
I notice.
Are you trying to do this for Ryder or?
I know it's like that meme of the guy behind the tree.
Yeah.
I realize I do it a lot when I'm like talking. I don't think it's just a thing I do. I have to do something with my hands, and I think it's just one of those things. Like if I had to sit on my hands,
I don't know what to
talk.
do with my hands right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it fit perfectly with your creepy statement of being a
yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, it didn't work well. It wasn't intentional. It never is.
Let's see. A lot of camaraderie on that magical night 20 years ago when I threw Adam Ingstrom on the ground and we beat Lakeview in the playoffs.
I knew
Sorry.
that was
Well, sure. I think so. I coached junior high basketball 4 or 5 years, and I had a little bit different of an experience of it, because I think it was more like regret, in the sense that as a coach, I loved practice. And maybe it was just like having control. But as like a student athlete in basketball, practice was, I mean, I was like Allen Iverson, man. We talking about practice, man. We talking about practice, not a game. But yeah, I mean, there was something about like you said, the bus rides, I think, the just like chopping it up during JV games while you're sitting in the stands watching, that sort of thing. And like I would say like grinding it out in like summer camps and stuff like that. Summer camps, like a summer team basketball camp, is a very weird experience for someone who's not like in that. I don't know if you want to call it culture. I think that's maybe a bit heavy-handed, but like in that atmosphere, summer camps are strange because you're there for 2 or 3 days. You're living in a dorm. It's not air conditioned. It's hot as hell. You're playing like 4, 5, 6 games a day. You're eating crappy dining hall food, because most of these are at colleges. I remember we had ours at Allegheny College in Meadville, and then also at Clarion. And they're just weird. It's just a real weird circumstance. And I think that definitely had a little bit of like a bonding effect. But my team, my high school team you had like almost like dyads. You know what I mean? Like I was tight with the point guard, who's the only other senior on the team, and then I was tight with one other player, but the rest of the guys I didn't hang out with. It was very much I can't remember that team. Greg, you know better than I would, but the Red Sox team where it was 25 Cavs for 25 players. You know what I
Oh
mean? Just
yeah,
like everybody
yeah.
was off doing their own thing, basically. And then my other sport was track. And that's just like a very individual sport to begin with. And I hated the practices and I did whatever I could to get out of them. And a lot of times that meant saying, like, hey, can I go use the restroom in the locker room? And then just going home. And so, like, track was just kind of whatever. I think that a lot of that for me was built differently just because of like the things that I'm into, where like me and my buddies would congregate at one house and we would play like Tekken all night. Loser gives up the controller, winner stays on, that sort of thing. Like, it's just passing it around. And that's really like kind of where I experienced the most of what you're talking about. It wasn't necessarily within the sports. It was just kind of that, just like that was the house that everybody went to. And, it was like, okay, what's for dinner? Buffalo chicken strips and junk food. And you're just kind of like chilling until 6 a.m, sort of deal. So I think that's where, and I do think, though, to your point, there are ways of kind of keeping that in tune now, but I do think it's more of a workplace. I mean, you and I have shared what, two employers, and one of them was very much like it's an us versus them thing. And so
Whatever could you be speaking of?
And it kind of keeps you it keeps you in those bonds. But I also think that there's like everybody's out for themselves, so you have as much of that as you can, but at the end of the day, you're just kind of watching your own back. But I do think that, like water cooler talk and office talk, like, oh, who the Steelers taking the draft, or what did who won the game last night, that sort of thing, I think that's kind of where it's at now. But yeah.
And I can even specify a little bit before Greg goes, I'm using sports as a leaping off point.
Yeah.
But I think at this era of life as well, my group of friends used to have poker nights, and used to have different activities like you're describing. So it isn't just sports. Maybe I was too narrow the way that I framed it, because, I mean, as you get older, people get married, people have kids and responsibilities. And, as somebody who doesn't have kids, or, doesn't have the same schedule limitations, I mean, sometimes it's like, well, damn, man, we used to do stuff together all the time.
Yeah.
And my basketball team, I use it as an example because we would leave practice. I mean, we'd shower after practice and we wouldn't even go home. We'd go to somebody's house, or, for food. One of my teammates, their family made tacos for the team every Tuesday and stuff like that. And just having the ability to just, like, it sounds so idiotic, but just to have bro time, and it's just something that doesn't happen anymore, so being a little bit more broad with it, not just as it relates to sports. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Well, so I'm going to start with the sports one, and then I'm going to go to the different direction. So with the idea of, like, I didn't play these sports in high school, with the teams or whatever, but all my friends were on these teams. So, when it was after practice, it was hanging out. It was all like the fun of these things, except I wasn't playing in the games. And like I was in the crowd wearing, a hog hat and getting involved in like that group of people in the crowd was like the team that we had and that kind of thing. So there was like still that camaraderie. And I will say, like, when that was all over, for sure, I definitely missed it. For like, honestly, I thought I was really going to miss it. And then I went to college, and the college I went to, it wasn't even Division III. It was NAIA at the time. And sports was there for where, for however you want to call it, but it wasn't something that I could get lost in. Plus, I also was going there for journalism, so I was covering sports, and you have to look at it differently. And I think that idea of covering sports kind of changed my idea of like that, missing that camaraderie or whatever, because I had to look at it a different way. But like Bretton had said, you have more of those work teams, and I had a job where our work team was really fun. It was when everything was the wheels were in motion, everything was oiled up. It was like a great time. And it felt like, if you got through a really tough day, it was a retail job, and if you got through like Christmas, it felt like a win. It felt as close as I could get to like winning a championship or something like that. Everybody got involved to that degree because you just got something that was really, really tough. Now, past that, most jobs I've had, I've been fairly by myself, which honestly I prefer. But there has been this part of me in the last like couple of years where not necessarily the camaraderie, but just kind of getting out there and just the competition of something. I don't have real competition, but I was like, man, look at something I could do. Like I've been, doing tennis a little bit in the summer last year and just things like that, just to kind of have that little back and forth. So I do think more than the camaraderie, I do miss the idea of like competition and that, because once you kind of hit a certain age, you can have sort of competition, maybe like competition with coworkers or another office or something. But unless you're playing like in a softball league or something, there's not like a real deal back and forth. And so I will say I do miss that. Like I was like, should I join like a golf, course, this year, and just do that just to get out with like 3 other random people. Because when you play at a popular golf course, you're just putting a group of 4 and it turns into like, bet on a couple holes or whatever. So I think for me, more than the camaraderie, which is definitely part of it, I just miss the competition more than anything. Just even if it's a little bit, because most of the time it's just, go to work, watch this, do this, and then repeat. And there's no real competition in it, unless you're competing against yourself, which I probably am doing that more than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think competition is something that I think is very complex and has different levels to it. And even as it relates to sports now, even when I coach, I find myself being like toxically competitive to the point where like I have to remind myself that I'm not supposed to trash talk a 16-year-old boy. Whenever he's like
Sure.
he makes a shot and he's holding up 3 fingers, I want to just like storm the court and just whoop his ass or something. But it's just, I don't know. When I didn't have that in my life, what we're talking about, I felt like there was something definitely missing. And for a while, when I was in college, I didn't really notice it that much because you're always stimulated. You're always around peers and people your own age, and there's always something to get into and entertainment and stuff like that. But then, kind of like you're saying, like you move on, and then it becomes workplace stuff or Y League or different things like that. And I think for me to feel happiest or the most content, I need to be involved with something like that, or like some sort of organization or club, even if competition isn't involved. I'm grateful to be a part of a basketball team, at the high school level, but it's getting to that point where, am I going to have to go to a park and play chess against old men? Like I need some of that,
I guess that you're probably not right into it. I think it's just that search for competition. I also just think that these people have been around their significant other for literally 50 years. And it's just kind of their way of like, we both need to have separation. I'm going to play canasta. You can go play chess and we'll meet back for dinner kind of idea.
God,
So
I thought you were going in a way different direction.
Yep.
Oh no, I didn't even know. But yeah, so I think that's the thing. And so Brenton, this is where I was gonna go with this. So you have 2 young children.
Oh
and I don't
God,
know
we gotta
what,
get
like,
off this topic.
No, it's not gonna be that. Just very quickly. This is actually how I just want to end it on this part of it is or if your kids do decide to play sports, do you want to coach like your dad did, or
so
little league or anything?
I've thought about this quite a bit. I think it would be really difficult for me to try to be just a passive observer. My My wife's younger cousin plays basketball. She was a freshman point guard this year for Jamestown. She was third team all region, and she was the District 10 runner up for freshman of the year. She's very good, but the problem is she plays at Jamestown.
Right.
And so we went and saw a couple of her games, and like I've started to realize like one of the things that we talk a lot about in the field that Barry and I work in when you're dealing with like certain type of kids who have certain type of issues is like, what are your physical indicators that you're about to have a meltdown? Right. And I'm starting to realize now that when my blood pressure gets high, my eyeballs start to hurt. And like that's like a thing. And every one of these games that we went to that the team struggled in, I was just like, my eyeballs felt like they were about to just pop and turn into jelly. And that's not even my kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's my wife's cousin. So I guess technically my cousin by marriage, whatever. But I think it would be very difficult for me to be a coach or a passive observer, because I've seen, I mean, prime example is just observationally seen like a father and son coach duo, and it wasn't always the best. You know what I mean? It didn't always mesh well. And I also think that when you have a standard for yourself, with me being obviously a Mercer basketball playoff legend, as you know very well, Greg, legend. That
Number
carries.
retired.
What's that?
Number retired.
No, they didn't go that far yet.
Oh,
give it time. I think that carries a certain weight of expectation. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Obviously, like when
the shove.
It was more of a swim move.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
Love
not
the statue of just that, you doing that.
Yeah, just over the top.
But tying into what you said earlier about the regret that you have, right?
Yeah.
This is something that I've thought about immensely. And all of the things that you're bringing up, I can use examples of like, I missed the camaraderie of basketball camp, but I went out drinking with the lacrosse team at basketball camp, that was at the same college, the same time as our basketball camp. There was a lacrosse camp, and I never took it seriously. And we talked about the future kids. I've had to talk. I don't have kids, as I previously stated, but I've been in 2 relationships where we talked about having kids. One of them was with another tall person, and I had to warn them that I'm going to be a toxic ass dad. It's like, if you're playing this sport, you're getting after it. You're like, I'm just not going to let you passively, not take it seriously, because it will be a regret that haunts you forever. I just don't see a way where, if I have kids, where I won't be involved with them, whether it's even coaching them at home and making them, shoot. Listener of the program, Dave Slagle, and I talked about how, his dad would didn't want him to have a job, but he would have to go shoot 500 jumpers before he was able to take the car out or something like that. That's the type of energy that I'm on. No regret.
I think though that it's not good to live vicariously through your kids, because I think that puts an unwarranted amount of pressure on them. And that's where I'm at. And where I'm at is, okay, you want to do X, you want to do Y, you want to do Z, that's fine. Give your best effort at whatever those things are. You know what I mean? Just make sure that you're applying yourself. Don't, like you said, don't do anything to waste your time. But at the same time, be the best version of yourself within that, whatever that is, to the best of your ability. And I think that that's the main thing. Trying your best, not trying to just coast, like applying yourself, practicing, whatever it is. And that's where like my son hasn't really shown a lot of interest towards sports, but he's shown interest towards other things. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to do this, then you're going to do it. You're not going to quit. You're going to keep, you're going to keep after it. I think it's really hard to say right now because they're still both very young. And, I'm like, I can kind of see where things might be headed, but you just never know. You know what I mean? To kind of go back on or to circle back around to a point that you made, Barry, is that I think that's what my regret is just knowing that I could have done more. I could have done more. I could have done more to be a better player, to be a better teammate. I think about there's a moment in time where it stuck in my mind of I was a senior on the team. I had the opportunity to show a great deal of leadership, and I let that moment pass me by. And I do regret that. But that's 20 years ago now. You know what I mean? I think at this point, and this kind of piggybacks on something that Greg said, is I am competitive with myself, but it's not necessarily within the realm of athletics. I'm just of where I'm at, trying to just learn new things or like new skills. And I think that that's how I compete with myself now is I'm going to, we've been doing this podcast now for coming up on 3 years. And that was like a challenge for me because of at the very beginning, it was almost like public speaking. And that was like a horrifying concept to me. And I remember when we did the first episode, I was sweating from every pore in my body afterwards. But at the same time, there was like an adrenaline rush. And then it just kept getting easier and easier and easier. And then I was like, okay, well, now we're going to add this video component. And I've tried to get better and better and better at that. And so that's where I'm kind of at in terms of like that level of competition is I'm just competing with myself on how can I make myself better in what ways. And, that can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It could be, I want to lose weight, or I want to, or I want to make sure I go to the gym, or I want to run a mile or under this time, or it doesn't even have to be athletic. It could be, I want to read this many books this year or whatever. So it looks different for everybody. It's just like, if you're doing something to push yourself, I think that's positive. If you have people to do that with, that obviously builds the camaraderie, like you kind of introduces the topic. And I think that's, it's definitely doing this has definitely brought Greg and I don't want to say closer, but definitely back together.
Sure.
With him having it's been, I think 10 years since we've seen each other, like in person.
It's actually been 11, I think.
When was Dale's wedding?
I think it was 2012, because I moved to California, to LA in 2013. So
when did you move to Texas?
Let me see. Maybe no, wait. It was 12. Yeah, it was 12 because it was August. It was in August 2012 is when I moved to. Right. I moved to Texas or to LA. Did a short trip. But anyhow, I was there very briefly to see everyone for a wedding. For Dale's wedding. So moving on. Speaking of possibly being in a situation, did you have anything
to wrap up that with?
Bartholomew. The only thing Bartholomew. Yes, go ahead.
Bartleby, the Scrivener.
No, I mean, that's just, and even talking this out, maybe I'm realizing that I don't even miss camaraderie that much as I miss, as much as I enjoy being a part of the team to try to atone and teach lessons from my own regrets. Hey, we shouldn't have to encourage you to try hard. That's something you got to come with. We can teach you the technical aspect of the game.
Sorry.
All right.
No regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. But yeah, that's just, I don't know. It's just something that I was. You said that we'd have our own topic. That's just something that I think about endlessly. now that the season's over and they're doing, we're doing open gyms and stuff like that. I haven't been able to make it because of work, but it's something that I miss when I'm not a part of it. Thank you for the hand gesture. But
That's
schedule
what
should be freeing back up.
you want to talk about. No regrets. This is what my band teacher used to do when I wouldn't practice, which was all the time because I never practiced.
Shame, I know your name.
Yeah,
Tisk.
That's
Tisk,
great.
tisk.
So who's
Well,
up next?
I'm glad.
Last
Well,
chair trumpet.
before we do that, I just want to say I'm glad that you're able to talk through it. I didn't know that the Annals of Our Lore would turn into a therapy session, but maybe at some point we'll be able to get someone to cry emotionally in a weighted way. So we were talking about, Brendan was talking about maybe putting yourself in positions you're not necessarily comfortable, and this leads us to Brenton, possibly positions where I don't know if all three of us have been there. I know I certainly have, but this idea of
you can't say positions that many times.
I can
and me not hit that button.
I'll say positions all the time. So, Brenton, your topic for tonight.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, which is basically the feeling that you're in a position that you do not belong in for one reason or another. And I've experienced this at multiple stops along my professional career. There's probably been a few times on the show that we've interviewed some people that I've felt like I should be in. You should not be talking to me right now. Basically. Excuse me. And I just, wanted to, I guess, check in and get your guys' take on if this is something that you have experienced in your life and how you deal with it.
Barry, you're our guest. Go ahead first if you've experienced anything like this.
I could speak about this endlessly, truly, because I don't know if other people feel the same way that I feel, but I think that I view the world largely with the same exact lens as when I was like 18, 19 years old. Like after probably maybe even a little later than that, after a couple of years of college, I don't think that I've developed my sense of self beyond that. And that's how I view me and my interactions with people. Like I've been a supervisor in my job at 3 different companies now for like the past like 8 years. And I think that's fucking nuts. Like, I just think it's the craziest shit, that like.
Me too.
Yeah, Brenton, as somebody who's worked alongside me and, been my peer and subordinate
tormentor
company structure, like, I think it's wild that I'm viewed as one of the good ones by people. And I'm not saying that I even agree with them or like the best at their job or capable of supervising people, because like in interviews, I have these intrusive thoughts where like, don't tell them that you drank so much tequila once that you threw up in your own shoes. They won't give you a job, right? And I feel like I have endless stories and hijinks where like if people knew the real me and not office me, they would not listen to me. They would not take me seriously. And on top of that, in working at social work, where like you're responsible for like in my job now, like helping people raise / discipline / guide their children. How am I qualified to do that? I am an idiot. I am a real dumb person.
I hope none of these people are listening.
Oh, because
I know what happens if a grown person's listening.
But I don't get the but I'm going to continue. It's just, I just find it very interesting that people thought
What's
it was
the most you've ever paid for a cake, Barry?
What's that?
What's the most you've ever paid for a cake?
I don't know that I've ever bought a cake.
Fair enough. Proceed.
What?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. But I definitely feel imposter syndrome in that regard at work. because like I had like a 2.3 GPA in high school, and it wasn't much better in college. I don't know why multiple people have viewed me in a positive enough light to promote me. I don't understand. But then to combat that, sometimes then I look at the public and realize who I'm in the running against, and maybe I'm not so bad, But imposter syndrome is something that I feel daily. It's just wild.
Well, you've given me a lot of runway here, Barry.
Yeah, let me have it. Get after it.
I'm kidding.
Well,
oh,
I have, this is a weird thing where I have had it and then quickly said, screw it very quickly with that. And I maybe have taken on more of like this than I ever thought I would when I, decided, what I decided to do initially with my life. And then when I ended up, what I'm doing, currently or whatever. But when I started journalism, this is really the first time it happened. It's like I'm in college and I work for this newspaper. Essentially, it was the Pittsburgh Sports Report, and they give me this assignment to go and do the Pitt preseason press conference. Now, I was stoked, and this is something I was going to use for my own personal thing, for my topic tonight too, and I can reflect back on it. But I go in there, and I am like, I have a shirt and tie, like I'm way too overdressed for, if you've seen journalists, in general, if they're generally dressed, especially sports journalists, if they're not on TV, dress pretty schlubby. I'll say that 100% of the time. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And so I walk into this presser, and then, like I said, it's the preseason, so you get a lot of access. I mean, I didn't even know how much access I got. I was just told I was supposed to write this many words on this thing. And so I'm there, and Jamie Dixon, the coach at the time, now the TCU coach, is doing a questionnaire or a presser and taking questions. And I asked a couple questions, and I don't think anything of it. It's just questions I had written down. I had obviously overthought. And I'm still kind of sitting there, and I am, like you said, Brent, with the first time you did the pod, I am like sweating through. And I was like, I'm not like a big sweater unless I'm under my heat lamp here, the way it feels. And
or you had recently done a cracker with the bomb on it.
Yeah, exactly. So not like that big. So I am like sweating through my shirt. And as I'm walking out with the team, and I see a couple of the players, and I just thank them for being able to interview them earlier in the day. And then Jamie Dixon comes over to me, and I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't even I was, I would have been, I think I was 20 at that time. And he comes over and he's like, "What's your name, kid?" Like, very just intense. I did not expect it. And I am shaking at this point. I was like, I'm great. I kind of forgot my name. And then he's like, "Those were really good questions." And I'm like, "Thanks." Like, probably cracked my voice, as I still do. And he's like, "Where do you work?" And I told him. And he's like, "Well," he's like, "those are the best questions all day. You're going to go a long way," or something like that. Something in that vein. I always forget because I was still very nervous. And they patted me on the back. And from that point on, I think of that moment where that was extreme imposter syndrome. I'm there with people that have been covering sports for 20 years, 25, 30 years. And he went out of his way to come over and talk to me about that. And it's a memory I still very fresh. In the sense he did it, I can never really remember what he said because I was freaking out. So I've been in those positions where it's I covered, some different Pirates things and different Steelers things as a sports reporter. And then I moved on to different things where I did a radio plugs for Pittsburgh for a little while.
I was going to say, you did, what was that, Trib Live? You did a couple radio episodes for the ACC.
I did. I was the ACC sports reporter, via the web because of Pitt. And I did a month worth of those radio hits, and I'd never done radio my entire life. And yeah, to say I wasn't nervous is a lie, but I also had this idea of this is what I've always said about when you get hired for something or when you're put in a position. I never hired myself for anything. I did my interview. Whatever they thought of that interview, they decided to put me in that position. And I just have to make the best of this thing. The one thing that like I will say that I do, and it wasn't something I did until I got into college, is like I bust my ass. Like I really try to work hard, because if there is that idea of imposter syndrome, if other people can feel that, that's always my nervousness of like, not necessarily that I have it, but just if other people sniff that I feel like an imposter, they're going to try their way to get it out of me and to displace. And I really have always been proud of that, of myself, as working hard and doing the best I can in any job. I mean, I left the pizza restaurant that I used to work one time just crying because I just couldn't do it. Like I wasn't fast enough and I just wasn't as good as everybody else, people that had worked in the restaurant industry for years. And I just wasn't as good as them at doing that job. And then finally I got really good at it because I just decided I'm going to bust my ass on this. So I understand that in that weird way, but I think like for me, I think it's one of those things where like, I really truly believe in the fake it till you make it. And I really do. I honestly think that it like that would be my tombstone if I had one. He faked it till he made it, like in anything. Because I've had so many weird jobs in my life where I had no idea what I was doing day one. And I just pretended like I had been doing it for 20 years. And so I get imposter syndrome, and I understand 100% why people feel it. And maybe that is just my way of battling it, is just, I'll just keep faking it. I'll just keep working my ass off so nobody else sees it, even if it is the actual example.
I think that
Barry, I would say, Barry, first, what do you think of that idea of just faking it till you make it?
Brother, when you said that, I'm like, yeah, I do that every day. I literally do it every day and act confident about stuff that I'm like, again, I feel like I have no business talking about. Like people ask me questions about like what's in the best interests of their families and stuff like that, and I give an opinion, and then again I have like these thoughts, these intrusive thoughts, like, would these people listen to me if they knew that, I just drank 16 beers yesterday and vomited out my bedroom window? I mean, that hasn't been at this era of my career, but
Sure.
there were times early on in my career where I would run drug and alcohol groups hungover. So maybe I deserve the imposter syndrome feelings, but I would just get up there and I'd, like fake it till you make it, but that doesn't change the fact. And I think what you're describing with yourself is like your anxiety or your self-motivate, whatever it is, you have something that forces you to work so hard because you don't want to feel that way. Whereas
it's anxiety.
I admitted about myself in a sick way. I took much more pleasure in knowing that I could not read the book and get a C on an exam, on a paper. In a sick way, I loved that I could just like stroll in somewhere and just be average to above average at a lot of stuff. And like we come back to like I didn't apply myself in basketball. I didn't apply myself, to education. It scares me. Not that I've achieved an immense amount, but I really haven't put that much hard work into stuff. I'll tell you that. And it's just
I'm aware.
Brenton's disgusted. I can tell he's disgusted at the things that I'm saying.
Well,
because of different, I'm sure like early, as soon as like his first week, he's probably thinking like, who the fuck is this 7-foot tall buffoon that is telling me that I have to go to court somewhere, or like what? I'm sure that was the lens, but.
Are you really 7 feet tall, Barry? I knew you were big. I didn't know.
6'10" 3/4.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
You are a big man. Okay.
Yeah.
Brenton, what were you gonna say there? What were you gonna add in?
Again, just like JFK level runway. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to show restraint. I think that I dealt with this more in social situations than in professional situations, because like I interviewed for a few jobs right out of college for teaching jobs, and they didn't pan out. And it was like, okay, well, I find out one of them I was up against 100 100 other applicants. It's like, okay, we have a 1 in 100 chance. Once I got into the field that I'm at, and kind of, it took a year or two to get my sea legs under me, but once I got it figured out, after that, it's been pretty much a lot. Like, I've had confidence interviewing for any position that I've had, really. And I know this is going to sound very pompous, and I know that Barry has had to endure this from time to time, but I'm probably overqualified for most of the positions that I've held.
I want to die. Go on.
Wow.
But I really felt this, like the most I've felt this is in social situations, particularly when I was younger, because it was just like, I'm doing what I need to do, or what I feel like I need to do to fit in. And I'm in these situations where I'm really not that guy who's like hang out, go to parties guy, but I'm trying to fit in. So I'm going to do that.
I want to fit in.
I want to fit in. But I was never really comfortable in high school and even in college to a degree with like who I was in terms of like the things that I'm interested in, and like just not really comfortable in my own skin, or just like putting it out there like, yeah, I'm a big fucking nerd. You know what I mean? And so you project as, or I would project as not being that way. But the older I got, the more I've learned to embrace that, to the point where, now I feel more comfortable with who I am, not just like putting out on display, like, okay, this is who I am, this is what my interests are, whatever, but just being myself. Some people would probably say that they would like me to be less of myself, especially in a professional setting. But sometimes you can't change the what do you look smug, Barry.
Yeah, go on, you're making some good points.
I was told the other day that I'm irreverent, and I think that's the best way to describe it.
That is a good way.
Yes.
Irreverent, yeah. That is how I would.
Not a reverend. Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch. No, not that kind.
Yeah. No, I think I really like the idea of imposter syndrome. I would, on your thing where you're saying like about the idea of, when I mean on, I like the idea of it. No,
Yeah,
when I like the idea of it,
that's weird.
No, I was going to clarify, because I think everyone at one point or the other has gone through it, and I think if you can make it through the other side with any of those kind of things, it's like that much of like a confidence booster. Not that I need more confidence when I do things. If anything, if in anything in my life, if anything, I've been probably, except for athletics, I would consider myself on the verge of like cockiness more than confident. With anything work related, I always think I'm the best that's ever done it, because that's just my mentality. But I think with imposter syndrome, there is that thing where like, man, if you can get through it, if you can defeat yourself and that idea of like, I no longer feel like I don't deserve to be here, that's like got to be one of your biggest reliefs in life. And to get through it is, I think, key.
I
realize
clarify.
This is a therapy show.
Yeah. I just want to clarify for the lay listener. Barry and I have worked together off and on for 6 years.
Yeah, 5-6 years.
Right.
And at various points in times, for some reason, he was my supervisor, and I was a constant tormentor for him in that role. Initially, not purposefully, but then definitely purposefully.
You know what? And I'll give you credit. To a certain degree, I think you could probably start a cult. Because I've never disliked work until you bring up things that I'm oblivious to. And then it'll be something. It'll be a policy. It'll be a policy that I have like no opinion on, and then you talk to me about it in a certain way. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. Like, I'm pissed. You know.
Oh
and
my!
it's just, It's just I'm Brendan, and I'm going to say this, and this is the most heartfelt thing that I can say. I'm so fucking glad that you're gone. Like I'm just oblivious to so much angst and misery now that you're not bringing it up every 5 seconds. You know,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm glad you did this, and I was going to move on either way, but you literally made the best Greg way into my topic. This is incredible, because you're talking about the idea of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on, and this other person comes in here and you're not sure what to say. And my topic is, it's okay to not act like you've been there before. Everyone says that you should act like you've been there with a lot of different things. And what you said is that Breton knew something that you didn't. And one thing that, I have personally struggled with because of my confidence / cockiness is like asking questions. And I'm going to bring this a little bit towards sports, but I actually was thinking more of like workplace situations and things like that, where like people are so scared to ask questions because at every job, you're kind of like, you said in your cover letter and you build your resume a certain way where you're supposed to boost yourself up to a certain level that day one, you should just be bike without training wheels. And I think there's this thing now, as much as I hate like some W culture things, but I think there's this thing now where like no one feels comfortable asking questions anymore. And I hate it. And I see it in my profession now where like some, they're just people that I deal with that refuse to ask questions unless you actually like, try to like force it out of them, because it's okay not to know things. And that's kind of more, I guess, what the topic is. But this idea that you are allowed to not act like you've been somewhere before in various aspects, and it's totally fine. And the other thing I want to say is, on the sports end of things and watching a lot of basketball lately, there's one player that Bretton and I, we don't agree a lot on like sports sometimes. I feel like we agree more than we used to, but the one thing we both agree is that we love Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy freaking Butler.
And that is a prime example of a athlete who does not act like he's been anywhere before other than, I need to be on a basketball court and I need to get buckets and I need to do the best thing I can. He doesn't, he gets excited because any of us would get excited playing basketball, but there's another team that I will not mention because I know, but they all act like they've been there before. Right. And
I don't know why are you afraid of the Celtics fans?
No, it's because I don't want to give them any due credit for anything.
I thought maybe you were worried about Patio, what's his name, that commented real racist stuff on one of our videos.
No.
Coming
it's
back
just
after
this
you.
Idea. It's this idea of like, we have mentioned certain things about like, humbly, I consider myself one of the best players. Or humbly, I am one of the best. Not I consider, but humbly, I am. And then comments about you don't want us, don't let us win certain games. And like, I hate that attitude. And we grew up with Michael Jordan, who basically was like, I'm going to give every 100% of my effort. I hate saying 110% because that doesn't exist, but I'm giving 100% effort every single night. And because that's acting like you haven't been there before, because you don't take anything for granted. So that's how I like to go about my personal life. And so I just want to know what you feel like on that aspect of like, it's okay to ask questions. It's also okay to feel like an outsider on something.
Before Barry, I just want to clarify. It's not that I knew something.
No.
Barry didn't know. It's that
right.
I have, when it comes to work, a point of view of being anti-establishment. And I point that out to him, and it makes him upset.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't there for the conversation, so I took it away that. So,
yeah.
But I think, but I think no matter with Barry, like your position as being the supervisor, like even if you have to ask somebody that's underneath you on the ladder, like it's okay. Like people shouldn't look at you differently because of that. Because like I've said in the previous thing. And this is what I was alluding to. You did not hire yourself for that position. So people trusted you to be in that position because maybe they feel like you can ask questions, and it's okay. It's okay to be humble, except when you say that you're one of the best to ever do it, because that's actually not being humble. So Barry, what are your thoughts on that idea?
I've, again, it seems like there's a sports motif. I've always loved the silent killers, and like you talk about humility, that's something that is severely lacking in society now in general, because you have the ability to share an opinion anytime you want to via social media, via text or whatever. When, hey, I wish sometimes that we lived in a world where, your Aunt Margie didn't tell you that you were magnetic because you got a shot in your arm. Like where people think that they're experts about everything, and at first they're experts about, medical procedures, and then, Ukraine gets invaded, and now they're, foreign policy diplomats, and they know everything, and their opinions are fucking gold and shit like
Sure,
that.
right.
I can't stand that level of hubris that exists in the world. But you want to talk about like acting like you've never been there before and just like rising to the occasion. Tim Duncan was one of the people that I really liked, because he just
Same.
go out there and give you 30, give you 30 and 15, and not say a word about it, and
No.
just get back to it. Or like, nowadays, like you have athletes that like will stick with basketball. They'll shoot 3 for 14, and then their Instagram story is them getting up shots after the game or whatever, showing that they're in the grind, because everything's a spectacle now, right? Everything's a spectacle, and you have to have like a different image for every different circle that you're in, where you act this way in front of these people and so on and so forth. I fully agree with what you're saying about like, asking for help or asking even for collaboration whenever it's something's too much for you, is something that's like, that doesn't happen often when you admit that you're not either the right fit or the best person for this job, or even the right person to ask or whatever. Just showing humility is something that doesn't happen anymore. And, my mom used to preach this to me, because I would always have a little bit of a cocky edge to me, where I thought that I was a good basketball player. I never was a good basketball player. I was just super tall, right? But I can remember doing certain things on the court, getting into shoving matches, and she would always tell me, like, pride comes before a fall, man. Pride comes before a fall. So if you are acting prideful, acting like you know what it takes, or that you're so good at something or whatever, you're ultimately going to fall on your face. And again, sports, Dylan Brooks is going to play in China next year because he acted like he could guard LeBron. Just wild shit like that happens all the time, and it is kind of scary, the level of, maybe I would definitely, if I had to choose, I would definitely choose imposter syndrome and being nervous that you look like an idiot, other than like acting like you're the shit and actually looking like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
well, pride is considered not good. So you don't want to be proud. That's one of those things. It's okay to be proud of your kids, but you don't want to be prideful of yourself. Brenton, your thoughts?
Yeah, looks like the Celtics are going to win, so that probably saved Grant Williams. I think him and Poole and Dylan Brooks were all going to be starting for the Shanghai Sharks next year. That's one of those things too. It's like, I think that's a good example of kind of what you're talking about, is like the guys who are that guy. I hate the whole like, I'm him, or that whole thing. Like, he's him. That's like, I don't know where that came from, but he can go back there.
I hate it.
But the people who are like that dude, they don't have to tell you that they're that dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think after the game, Jimmy Butler had said, like, he's, good teams. Grant Williams is a competitive guy. He had some nice plays. I'm maybe not the guy to talk to.
Right. Exactly.
And, you know, but I think that I was interviewing for a position at one point. This position, I was trying to get out of the field that I'm in. And so I interviewed at this place that did like life insurance sales consulting, but it was their shtick was, we don't do cold calls because we're with the unions. We sell to the unions, so you just have a list of union people, and that's who you call. That's how you build your clientele. And so I interviewed with them, and I had like no qualms about taking this job or whatever. But then I was talking to a friend of ours who's in finance, and I was like telling her, it was Ty, it was our guest from last week. He's in finance. So I was talking to him like, hey, I'm interviewing this job. You know, what are some good things to say to try to get this type of job? Because this is the type of job you're in. And he said the most refreshing thing, and I think that this is like ubiquitous across all fields, is managers, directors, supervisors, whatever, don't want to hear like if you ask a question like, hey, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And it's like, oh, well, this is exactly what I would do. I would know what to do because I've been in this situation and I know exactly how to handle this. They're more looking for the, you know what, I've never found myself in that position. And
Yes.
you know, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm very excited to learn about it. And so I've used that kind of in that interview, and they were like, all right, let's get you set up, you know, we'll get you a client list. I'm like, whoa, you know, pump the brakes. I need to know more about the position or whatever. Ultimately ended up not taking it, but I think that that's something that, like, when I sit in on interviews to kind of hear, you know, like as a second opinion, sometimes I might sit in on an interview or whatever. That's the sort of thing that I'm looking for to hear, is, like Barry said, a little bit of humility, a little bit of, I don't know the answer. I don't have all the answers, because people like that are very grating on the personality. People who think that they've been there, or they've done this, or they have that experience, or you know, they're entry level but act like supervisors, whatever. And I think that that's very grating on people, not just because as a supervisor or a coach or whatever, you're not dealing with someone who's coachable or teachable. And I think that that's what you're looking for, is people who are ready, willing, and able to kind of take the feedback as somebody who's been in that position. I mean, I've been in this field for 13 years now, you know, and I have a lot of information or a lot of insight that I can give. And it's like, if I was going to go, you know, write an article, like, I would talk to you because you're a journalism guy. You know what I mean? Like, give me some advice, whatever. So I think that that's what it is. I think that just people in general need to be receptive of the idea that if you're getting started somewhere, you shouldn't feel like you have all the answers, because you do not.
Right. And I think it's just in my nature to ask questions, having done what I did for a long period of time as a journalist, where you have to ask questions. But I also, and maybe this is just the proverbial prick that I am sometimes with things, is I also ask questions because sometimes I think things are messed up and no one's ever asked that question before. And if I felt like either like I was too good for the job or whatever, something like that, I might not ask that question because I don't care. But I feel like sometimes asking questions leads people to answers that they never thought about. And so, like, you could actually be helping someone or something by
sometimes you
asking
have to be a sometimes you have to be a
Yeah.
shitster.
Yeah, and it's
you
like,
worked that summer with my dad. You saw what he's like, or was like.
right. And it's like, yeah, and it's like, I mean, it's just one of those things where, like I said, I mean, like, it's in my nature to ask questions. And just one thing that I like preach to everybody I've ever met that talks about, like, you know, getting in a career, and it's like, you know, especially if you're getting a journalism career, other than my first question being why, I'm always like, make sure you ask questions, and not just asking questions about like the people you're interviewing, but ask questions about why this, assignment's important, or why my job's important, or why this area needs to be covered. And obviously the who, what, where, when, why, and how. But you can apply that to anything that can go outside of journalism. So I think just asking questions is such an important part in our lives and in our jobs and in our day to day. I mean, if you don't look at life without questions, then you just assume everything's okay. And I think we can agree that not everything's okay. And that idea of acting like you haven't been here before can be like, I haven't been in this position where I think this is okay. And now I need to ask a question, because the answer might be helpful to you, but it could also be helpful to like the greater like system at large, which I think is really, really important. So, I mean, for me, that's kind of my final takeaway on this point. And I really do feel like this was a therapy session. And just not even jokingly, it was like, there were thoughts that came out of me that I didn't have initially. And this idea of like asking questions can help you, but it can also help everything.
It's going to cost you $40 then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like we need to start charging people, but anyhow, yeah. So, Barry, any final thoughts on not just this topic, but maybe just in general about tonight's program?
What's your take on people who feel like they know everything, Barry?
Well, that's going to be tied up in my final closing thoughts. I really recognize that Brenton's a piece of shit. Through these conversations, like it becomes more evident the more that you interact with the guy.
Sure.
And these specific topics really make you realize that. No, jokes aside, I mean, I get interested in people's lens with these things, because like I can't stand to know it all. I really can't. It's okay if you're an expert in your field. And I just think in general, a lot of it ties back to people are very self-important. And it's only increasing because of the digital media space, where you can reach so many people without even intending to, where, you can think that you know it all. And then after your work meeting, you can hop on Google and tweet something out, or, whatever it might be. Like, and just reach so many people with just nonsense. And so I think now more than ever, it's vitally important to just like, it's so cliche, but just like handle your shit. Don't be a dick. Reach out to friends if you miss camaraderie. It can all be summed up with just finding balance with the topics that we discussed. But interesting talk. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Brian, before I get to your final thoughts, I think this is a good t-shirt. All right, podcasts do this where it's a very like, you have to be in the podcast to know. And one for maybe the Annals of Our Lore is it just says Brenton is a POS. And on the back, it's obviously all our handles, but for all our social media, but people will be like, what? Because A, it's not a common name. So people are definitely going to wonder what that's all about. And B, it's just, it's just hilarious. So
I'll tell you
maybe
what, I'm going to start writing that on all the $1 bills that I encounter. Well, all the $1 bills are just going back in circulation with Brenton is a piece of shit, and then your podcast, BXG.
I would say like, yeah, exactly. I would say as long as you put the podcast on there,
I'll commit a federal crime so people are
good.
Aware.
Yeah, because if
that
people,
I
like the last.
Is that a federal crime? It's a federal offense.
You get to face currency.
Federal offense.
I just want the last thing that anybody does before they do coke is to see that. That's all I want. So, and maybe they'll be hopped up and they'll just subscribe and listen to a bunch of episodes all at once.
Yeah,
and of course, they'll go nuts. So, Brenton, final thoughts.
Federal offense. Federal offense.
Federal offense.
I don't have any thoughts. I feel attacked.
I didn't attack you.
You're not the only person here. I could fend off one of your attacks. You're like a fly.
I don't attack. I'm not an attacker.
No. Is there a difference between?
I'm like a ninja.
You're not you're not like an aggressor. You're like an irritant.
No. Yeah. I'm like
Yeah.
a mosquito.
Right. Right.
I may not, every once in a while I'll bite you, but every once in a while you're gonna get malaria and die.
Right.
That's what
Do
happens.
you think that mosquitoes that have bitten Magic Johnson are just like, oh fuck?
Well, not now. Guy's healthier than all of us.
That's fair. No, I don't have any thoughts. I'll tell you what. I'm just gonna try to think of something balls to the wall funny for next week's topics, because this was
depressing.
It was like maybe almost morose.
Yeah, and I like it. I want us to dig deep. I want us, like I said, my goal, and we're having I'm not gonna spoil, but we're having a great friend of mine, great friend of the program, longtime friend of mine. He's a very cheerful fellow, but I don't know. I haven't asked for his topic yet, but I'm expecting it to be maybe different. I don't know. I might go morose. Maybe I'm just gonna be like, do you ever think about death? And
daily, all the time.
No, just do your biggest life regret, and then tie that into somebody that you no longer talk to that you wish is still in your life.
That was a thing. Lost connections, I thought, was a good topic at some point. Lost connections. What was the thing?
I never lost connection with anybody that I liked.
Craigslist. Lost connections or misconnections, whatever it was. Yeah, it's like, I saw you at the grocery store. You bought Quaker Oats. And
had a fat dump truck ass.
Yeah, exactly. Boom. There we go. We ended on a nice positive note. Nice thick.
The biggest regret in my life is laying in the other room on the couch. That fucking dog, man.
Oh, dog. Oh. I don't know. I definitely tough. I have to dig deep for regrets. I'd have to dig deep for regrets. I try not to look back too often. I think about back, but I don't try not to look back. I try you're driving forward. You can't look in the rear view, kids. That's the way I look at it. But thank you, everybody, especially Barry for joining us, Brenton for being my co-host on this pod. Barry, you're a great guest. Sorry that we did hit a morose amount. If you need a shoulder to cry on, it will probably hurt your back to cry on mine. So ask Shaq, because I am very short and small. But I would appreciate a hug at some point. Maybe we'll meet in person at some point, because I feel like you're a good hugger. Brenton, I know you're a good hugger. And
Brenton probably gives the best hugs.
Brenton gives great hugs. I am sinewy and bony. You don't want to hug me. It's a lot of bone, and that's kind of it. That's what she said.
A lot of bone. You just walk right into this. Maybe we can do the dirty dancing thing.
Sometimes I try to walk into these things. Sometimes I try.
Time of my life.
I had a very quickly before I wrap.
We could probably do that at the reception.
Oh, I had a dancer friend of mine, and she did that to me in college. So
no, I think that you and I could do.
Yeah, she did that to me in college, and she was a dancer, so it's not like she was a very, very strong person, very funny. So yeah, that was a funny moment, because we were like hanging out, and I was like, I bet, because it was like she was telling me her like strength, and I was like, try to do the thing from there, and then she did. And I was like laughing. She dropped me after she did it, because we were both laughing so hard. But I'm okay.
Just how much do you weigh?
One of many concussions. How much do I weigh? I fluctuate between, I would say right now, I go between 132 and 140. I'm just back and forth.
I had to make weight for midget football when I was 9, and I weighed that much.
Yeah, so I was.
I'm not saying that as a positive. I'm saying I'm a fat fuck.
No.
But
well,
it's just intriguing.
I was a chubby child, and then I got super into running, and then I just kind of, I got too skinny at one point, because I was very it was not good. Maybe I can get into that as a topic when we go into a darker episode. But yeah, I fluctuate around there. I'm just honestly, I am just very there's not muscle, and there's nothing. There's just I'm like a cartoon drawing. I'm like a like the cartoon Doug, where everyone is just fat. That's me. That's
Because
how
I
I
skeet her so hard, people call her Patty Mayonnaise.
Wow, what a way to end.
That's
So
Bo Burnham.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was the Annals of Our Lore. Check out the Nexus, our companion program, both BXG Productions. Not LLC yet, but soon. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Thanks, everyone, for watching the YouTube where it bounces up and down with the volume. That's fun. I like that. And yeah, this was a great
Vertical
episode. I had a lot
Slice.
of fun.
Let me plug that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vertical Slice. I had it
Vertical
written down.
Slice is
Thank
coming.
you, Brett.
PlayStation Showcase reaction tomorrow with Chucky Buckets.
Chucky Buckets, Vertical Slice. I love that name.
Chucky Buckets?
Think about, well, both that and
Oh.
Vertical Slice.
Yeah.
I really like that. So thanks, everybody. If this is your first time listening, thank you. If this
Don't make
is
it
your
your
last
last.
time listening, I'm sorry. Come back. And if this is your middle time listening, continue to let everyone know. No one ever talks about the middle listeners. You're here. You've been with us. So middle listeners, we really appreciate it. Keep listening. Like and subscribe. Leave kind comments on everything. Tell your friends, tell your families, tell your mothers, tell your brothers. Tell people randomly on the street. Wear t-shirts that say, write Breton is a POS on your dollar bills, but make sure you put BXG on there, please. I better start seeing that in circulation. But once again, Barry, thank you. Breton, thank you. This was the Annals of Our Lore.